All right, well, welcome back to our second episode of our Corecast. With us is Raphael Viton, the co-author of Free the Idea Monkey, as well as Lynda McNutt Foster with Cortex Leadership Consulting, and I, Becky Freemal, with WFXR News here in Roanoke. And Raph, I want to start with kind of where we left off. We've talked about corporate America a lot. Can you talk a little bit about the clients you've worked more on a global level, and it's corporate and insert name? Is it corporate, whatever country? Are they all about the same as we are here in the States, or is it vary greatly depending on where you are?
When I'm in the room, it's usually because of the same issues. It's the same desires, same concerns, same challenges. Hey, we're stuck. We want to be more innovative. Hey, we want a culture, that embraces change better. We want to be more adaptive, more agile. And usually, again, and this is to answer the question, in any part of the world, it seems anyway, that as long as there has been enough suffering trying to get it right by just doing it the old way but harder, as long as they've suffered enough, they're open to, to talk to folks like Lynda or myself, where it's like, okay, hey, I think we might need to do a little of the transformation within ourselves as leaders first, and create maybe a different energy even within the leadership team before we make yet another unsuccessful declaration to the globe that we're going to be more innovative. And it turns out we do all this stuff, and maybe we implement some idea sourcing software, and we had all these types of different things. And gosh, we're still just as tight and constricted and not very good at taking chances as before. And I haven't seen it manifests itself perhaps differently across the globe in different cultures, but the root is still the same issue. And again, the work, whether it's in CPG companies, the Kellogg's of the world, whether it's with tech companies, the Microsoft, the Cisco's of the world, or the big insurance companies, the Nationwides, it's very similar. And it's almost like textbook. And so the good news is, hey, all of you, you're not so uniquely broken that you can't be fixed. It's more of just kind of some textbook kind of struggles and biases that need to be overcome. And you can do it. Like, there's no unique domain of creativity that only a few human beings have, right? Anybody can be creative because anybody can practice curiosity,
right?
If you want to, and if you have the humility to practice that curiosity. So that's the good news. The good news is we all have these muscles. We just might not have developed them as much as we have developed those ringleader, certainty, reliability, efficiency muscles, which served us very well. They're not wrong.
Right.
They're not bad. We don't need to throw those all away, but we do need to build some other muscles to help us be more successful and effective in the what do they call this? The fourth industrial revolution.
Yeah. Lynda, for you, what do you see with leaders in our area? How do you get them to get on board and to start using that humility issue or a muscle? And I mean, they're the leaders. If they don't make the bottom line, if they don't make the money, I mean, it's sometimes a hard cliff to jump off of and say, okay, Lynda, I'm doing this. Well, how do you get them to go?
They usually, what I've found is they call. They've tried other things, exactly like what he said. They haven't worked. They're faced with a challenge that they haven't been faced with, and they know they need a solution sometimes quickly. So it's worth bringing someone else in, normally that's been referred. So I would say in our field, most of the time it's referral, because there's a lot of trust. Like what he's talking about, the whole humility thing, that's big, because when I say I'm vulnerable, and I'm also saying I can't do this, I need your help in some way, that's an open space that they have to occupy, and they have to trust you. So if someone they trust has trusted you and that's worked out well, they're much more open. I think about, as Raph was talking about, I was thinking about when I was doing a lot of work with startups about 5 years ago. And I really came to the conclusion that working with startups you couldn't have the same results because they hadn't tried everything that was already in their head yet.
Yeah.
They were convinced that and they had a lot of story built around what they were about to do and a lot of buy-in to it. About 3 years in, they knock on the door and man, they are open, they are ready, and they will do what you say to do. You know, it's like fighting with your trainer. You're going to go to the gym and fight with your trainer, but that's kind of what it is sometimes. Yeah, and that's when you know you're not in the right spot. Yeah.
Raphael, how do you feel with your clients? Who are your clients? And is that what you find to be true with the bigger, more global companies, that they failed at everything? I don't want to say fail. That's such a strong word. But maybe just didn't do as well as they'd hoped on their own ideas. I mean, do you ever get entrepreneurs?
Oh yeah. No. And I play in the startup world and nonprofit world as much as the mid-market and the big ones. And I would just say the bigger it gets is typically just more corporate inertia that you're dealing with, and much less of a likelihood that the senior leaders will actually show that vulnerability that Lynda was talking about. Much less likely that you're going to have the senior most leaders actually saying, I don't know the answers. There's no way in the world me and the rest of us cronies at the top know what to do next. We know we've got, thousands of wicked smart people in the community. We're going to tap into you. We're going to be much better learners. Hey, you know what? We're going to learn together how to let go of the current success formula in service of a new success formula, because that's going to make us more successful for the future. And we're going to transform together. And I don't even know how to do it, but we're going to learn together. Like, that would be amazing social proof that is usually missing. And here's what's really interesting in those big corporations. I'll be there because the senior leaders have already made a, $200, $300, $400 million investment in the future, right? So I'll be there with the mid-level, the VPs. We call them they usually call themselves the coalition of the willing, which means they're ready to try and figure it out, and because they're going to do most of the work, right? The senior guys aren't going to do, the men and women aren't going to do the most of the work. It's the VP level, and their teams are going to be doing it. And they'll be saying in a group, I just don't think they're really committed yet. And I'll be scratching my head going, they just gave you $400 million to
They're
do
committed.
it. But they'll go, no, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about that social proof where the leaders have admitted they don't know what to do, where the senior leaders have admitted they're going to learn with the VPs and their teams how to be more curious, how to be more collaborative, how to change their relationship to risk, how to change the way they talk to each other when it really gets stressful. And when numbers are down, am I going to be punitive and hold and measure you the way I used to, when we look at these innovation investments? Or am I going to measure the way we invest and track our investment or innovation payoff differently because it's different? You know what I mean? Like, that's the social proof they're really looking for. That actually matters more than the hundreds of millions of budget allocated towards these transformation strategies. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, and how
really
do they find you guys? I guess my question too is, when you hear all this stuff and these leaders are having these issues, how do they even know you're the guy for them? Like, if there's a company listening right now, of course now they know because we've just given them your names, but how are they supposed to know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel? I think some people don't even know what's accessible to them. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, and you really have to do your homework. I mean, to find, I think, the Jedi innovation experts, right? There are more out there now than before, and there's even certification and accreditation that you can get that actually demonstrates that you are either, expert in the innovation process, in CX, customer experience processes and whatnot. So it's not like this magical black box now of just creative insanity and whatnot. And there are and there's different kinds. It depends on what your community of leaders would prefer. I think there are people who like the West Coast IDEO type of innovation. I think there's folks who like which is more qualitative ethnographic research. And there's some that prefer the East Coast, more quant type research, which I think a lot of the financial services companies, insist on the heavy quant research before they decide to go and invest in anything. And I always like to refer to, my old firm, Maddox Douglas Innovation Consultancy, as a more of a Midwest company because it's in Chicago, as a company that knows how to merge the two together, the qual and the quant, and actually help leaders work through the process so they can build innovation assets while working on themselves as leaders, while working on the collective group, in terms of the culture and then the environment that's necessary to allow for the innovation process, the innovation assets to actually be successful.
Talk to the two of you, obviously, both kind of do what you do at varying levels here in Virginia, you in Chicago, South America. How did you guys meet each other? And Lynda, how do you use his work to kind of, how do you utilize it in your classes and when you're helping corporations here in town?
The way I met Raph was we went to this 3-day long deep dive with David Emerald and Donna Zajan, who David wrote The Empowerment Dynamic. And everybody in the class loved Raph. I mean, we just thought he was the coolest guy. So he was actually sitting across the room, and we really hadn't had any interaction. I don't know if he'll remember this. But so I'm listening, and I'm sitting across the room, and all of a sudden they start talking about, well, you're going to have to work like a half a day, the rest of the day with one person, and you're going to have to go through these exercises. I was like, I know who I want to work with. I literally got on my hands and knees and crawled behind everyone and sat behind his chair. And they said, and so you're going to pick somebody now. And I popped up and I was like,
hi,
how would you like to work with me? And he's like, no way.
No, you just creeped me out, lady.
I know. And his response was so like, that was cool. I went, okay, this was exactly the person. And we got to work together a half a day. And he learned about my Go Monty interactive texting that was all about not making these trainings suntans or sunburns. Mm-hmm. And he got very interested in it. And so we've worked on some projects in regard to that. And so I've got to learn some of his material because I have to learn his material in order to create the questions to be able to slow drift through Monty. So it's been pretty exciting.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I remember it that way too. But she didn't creep me out. It was a good, and we were there working on ourselves, right? We're in training ourselves, and David and Donna have an awesome dojo to go train with them around the empowerment dynamic, which has been one of the number one tools or frameworks that I've always used to help leaders going through innovation conquer what I call innovation kryptonite, which is that drama and the lack of empowerment, the lack of feeling like you have power when you're in that innovation kind of context. I was going to say something else about that. What the heck was it? Drama triangle.
I'm watching it. I'm trying to help.
I love the innovation kryptonite.
Yeah.
It really is. They really do. The drama triangle, like that, that empowerment dynamic really does break through the innovation kryptonite. Yeah. Becky's had that learning too.
And it came from, we see it in any ideation session, any collaboration activity. You see people do that, either get shut down by someone who's more assertive with ideas and they back away from the table, or they get into that idea is stupid, which is a toxic way to respond in an ideation or in any type of environment. And you can see how much drama is created when you're in chasing after anything new, right?
Right.
And the idea is, well, how can we help people give them a framework that actually helps them kind of counteract that and counteract what I think the statistic is like 40% of most executives' time in corporate America, 40% of our time is spent dealing with drama because we work with a lot of people.
Right.
So if we could instead of that 40% of our time, or just decrease it by 5%, 10%, and use that towards actually focusing on the outcome we want, or if it could help us more quickly get to the creative problem solving, that would be great. And that's what we were working on. And ever since then, actually, we've partnered on multi-billion-dollar leadership teams in the U.S. working on helping them while they're going through this innovation kind of learning journey, this innovation process where they've spent millions of dollars on an innovation strategy engagement. They haven't even gotten to the culture work yet. They've just done we need to work on our leadership team in service of helping the organization be all of those other attributes we said, more creative, more curious, more collaborative, and be better at adapting to this really quick changing environment in our industry. They're in the insurance space and financial services, which is changing so rapidly because of technology, because of consumer preferences, and they need to build those muscles, and they need to do it quickly. And the CEO is committed to, in his lifetime, actually seeing some of these results, not some of that lip service nonsense you hear a lot of people say is, yeah, we're going to change, and then they don't do anything to actually build the muscles themselves. And this leadership team went through a year-long learning journey, and as part of the training, we used Go Monty as a way to help them reinforce what they learned in between the time that we were going to be together. They had executive coaches,
right?
And they needed, on top of that, how can I have an executive coach in my pocket, reminding me of this stuff? Because, hey, I got the material, I put it on my desk, I had every intention to focus on it and practice, but I didn't get to it, or stuff piled on top of it. So Go Monty was a great way to stay in their ear and stay close to them and keep it fresh and pull them back to the stuff that they care about.
Well, the Go Monty thing helps me a ton, just being in the class, because I'll forget I'll listen, and then I go off in the world and I'm busy and I'm taking the kids to school and I'm running into this and I'm going to that, and and all of a sudden, bing, in the middle of my day, this little Monty message will come up, and how did you utilize blah, 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 and I'm like, oh yeah, huh. And then you become more deliberate about that, and deliberate and intentional. If there's anything I've learned from Lynda McNutt Foster, it's to be deliberate and intentional.
Well, for me, it's super fascinating. The reason I invented the technology, and we've invested so much time and effort into it, is to be able to see how people are interacting with what they're learning in real time. So they're at work. Are they thinking about the concepts? Can they recall it? And how are they using it this week?
Right.
And is their language changing? Are their behaviors changing? Is their response time changing? So in other words, there's certain behavioral types that have to get everything right and perfect, which is counter to innovation, counter to coming up with ideas.
Hence the make mistakes on his t-shirt.
Right, make mistakes.
Right.
And
Fall forward.
So can we, through a process of slow drip, proactive, interactive questions that trigger your prefrontal cortex, the CEO of your brain, help you to respond more quickly to a question and not worry about whether you got it right or not, just the responsiveness enough and being okay with I made mistake. The system's going to tell you what the right answer is.
Right.
And people will still, it takes them a while to realize, oh, this is okay. There's no punitive damages to being wrong on Monty. We're only gauging your how often you're interacting and how quickly you're interacting to proactive questions.
Probably kind of helps train that muscle too, because when he said there's nothing wrong with being wrong, that's what you're exactly trying to teach these leaders of these companies, is there's nothing wrong with having a mistake.
Right. So. I'm sorry is not a vulgarity. It's not a set of bad words.
You said what?
Right. I'm wrong.
Right.
See?
Yeah,
Look at that, and I'm still breathing.
You are. You are.
Okay.
Very nicely done. Very nicely done. Well, let me wrap this up, and we're going to move ahead, because when we get back, we're going to do one more of these episodes, and I want to talk about maybe some examples of exercise versus training and how you help these leaders to succeed. And once they start taking the advice, what you see happening. So again, with us, Raphael Viton with the Free the Idea Monkey, and thank you so much, Lynda McNutt Foster with Cortex Leadership Consulting. We'll be right back.